So this session in the afternoon, we're going to be discussing and focusing on some of the real impacts that we're seeing with silvopasture in practice. So we're moving in a space where academic and anecdotal and experiential knowledge all really want to play together, and we all have to kind of come together and compare notes. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on this afternoon in our session here. So we're going to start off with Dr. John Fike. He's joining us from Virginia Tech School of Plant and Environmental Sciences and the Virginia State. He's the Virginia State Forage Extension Specialist. John grew up on a small, successful family dairy in Franklin County, Virginia. And after completing a Bachelor's of Science in Science Education at Wake Forest University and some global travel abroad, working in dairies in New Zealand, John switched to pursue a master's in forage agronomy and a PhD in dairy science from the University of Florida. We're very lucky to have him here talking about his research in forage and forage systems, biomass for bioenergy crops, industrial hemp, and of course, forage systems and silvopasture. On to you, John.
I promise I'll spare you the hemp and the bioenergy talks. So pleasure to be here. Privilege, really. Appreciated the invitation. Wasn't sure exactly what I needed relative to slides, and I'm going to just try to give you a whirlwind tour of a little bit of some of the stuff that we've done and seen, which may or may not all touch on what we're supposed to do relative to environment and economic impacts. So I got invited into silvopasture as a new faculty member when I arrived at Virginia Tech 20 plus years ago. And I thought, okay, sure, this is an opportunity for me to do some work, but this is stupid. But this is the first piece of the puzzle for me. I had a research project we were working on. We had two species, black walnut and honey locust, and they were planted at different densities and at different slope positions. And we looked at plant productivity underneath them. What's happening with the forage crop underneath. And in a very dry year and a very wet year, 2 years in a row, very different circumstances, we had about 15, 16% yield increase where you have a moderate tree density. Okay, everybody take a collective sigh. What is moderate tree density? Well, that's what we're all kind of searching for, and it's kind of a problem, right? How do you get there? So anyway, but that was enough to pique my curiosity and think these systems have a lot to offer. These are pictures not of the same site. I'll go back just for your reference again. These are 7 or 8 year old trees in this picture. And now these are 19-year-old trees. They were same kind of general location, different research study site. The left are honey locust trees. Those are grafted millwood trees. And on the right is black walnut. One of the things that was interesting when we started the work, we actually had better growth out of the honey locust trees. And what we're seeing with these trees, you can see the millwood honey locusts here are much smaller than these black walnut trees. Talking to somebody last night, the walnuts kind of, we've pruned them up. They kind of remind me of truffula trees if you are up on your Dr. Seuss. And so one of the things that happens is when you have those trees in those systems with different sizes, they have different shade effects, that sort of thing, we do see differences in plant productivity and in plant composition. Yes, there are data out there that says that we can have better forages, and that may or may not be true, but not all the forages that we see in our black walnut systems are particularly desired. We see more annual grasses that are less desirable. We have some native warm season material that is not particularly palatable, called nimblewill. And so it's not necessarily heavily present, but it's there and something to contend with. And one of the reasons why scientists work the way they do, we try to parse out things to, okay, what's the effect of this variable versus the effect of that variable? So that's why you have all black all black walnut and all honey locust. And, if I were designing systems, I'd be thinking more about integration. Can we do walnut and locust together where I've got a nitrogen fixer that's not got quite the canopy spread, say, that these black walnuts have? Lots of questions there. Now, I say we do have some reduction in forage yield, and these are summertime studies. That's another limit for the research that we have. These are summer studies, so we don't see what would happen on an annual basis. But I got ahead of myself here. One of the things that I think from an impact that our work has done or has had is, I mean, I think there was interest in honey locusts when Mike Gold came to Virginia Tech for a sabbatical, and he was talking to people there, and my colleagues that drug me into this, they said, well, we'll plant honey locusts and black walnut. And but you know, there hadn't been any real data looking at nutritional characteristics of these materials. There's some old studies from the literature out of Auburn, I think in the early 40s, and they're not really well documented, really great research that would suggest that there's high nutritional value. So we did some work that repeated that in a sense and gave it a more scientific underpinning. What you see is that these ground millwood seed pods have lower levels of NDF, so that's a positive. They're a little higher in lignin and a little lower in protein. But when you compare them, say, with whole dent corn or oat grain, they're comparable. So they look like they're, you know, potentially very nice feed resource for the farm that you don't have to pay for. And so I think one of the impacts that some of our work has done, I mean, I've had people from Colorado to Wisconsin to New England to Georgia to South Africa asking me about these materials and what the potential is. Is that all good? I don't know. Actually, if somebody says we're going to plant thousands of acres in Mozambique, well, you know, Australia worked to get rid of these things. We're working with grafted material, so it's thornless, but it's carrying the thorn gene. So, you know, all of this at the end of the day, it comes back to management. Kudzu is a great forage. You walk away from kudzu, it's going to take over what you leave behind. And so, you know, we've got hundreds of examples of that. And I think honey locust is great. Austin thinks, I'm happy for him. He's spreading the word. I hope he's not spreading the problem. But he's not, as long as people will manage. And that's at the heart of these systems anyway, right? Sorry, I'm taking too much time here. So average daily gain. So we look at animal performance in these systems. This is a 3-year study. The walnut, we have to destock because of that lower forage production. And what that means is those animals have a little more opportunity. And then when you compare kind of just total gain across systems, we're seeing similar gains. And that's great. And we've also got a tree. So, you know, we are having a potential environmental impact relative to sequestering carbon, standing carbon. We're not even talking about the soil changes. Most producers don't care about any of that. They come to me and say, you know, look, I got issues with animals that are on toxic fescue. They're high. They may be coming for other reasons. They may say, I want something different. They may say, I want opportunities for intergenerational land transfer. You know, why? And but you know, we needed some data to back up what we say is possible with these systems relative to you know, providing benefit to animals. And so these are data that essentially show that those animals that are in open systems, look, they have a little bit of opportunity to utilize shade based on the way our systems are set up, but they don't get so much. And those that do, boy, they take advantage of it. And what you see then is those animals that are grazing in an open system, they spend much less time lying down and more time standing. Those are energetically expensive activities, right? And so there's we can see that in the temperature on these animals that are in the open systems during the day, they're hotter. One of the things that we can't really measure in a typical production study is animal stress. And so recently we did a little bit of work looking at cortisol levels. And you know, the people that come to us and say, we're interested in animal welfare, that's like the #1 concern among livestock producers. It's animal welfare. And so we've got data that says those animals that are in silvopastures, chronically lower levels of cortisol. Doesn't necessarily translate into higher productivity, but they're more comfortable. And you know, people get that. And one of the silvopasture practitioners says, my clientele get it. He's direct marketing. People come in, oh, it's a lovely environment for your livestock. I want more of that. The customer gets it. And you sell that? Probably. Okay, we're stuck. Next slide, please. All right, there we go. So one of the other impacts that, because So just a little bit of my history. I started out as the egghead in the ivory tower. I had a research and teaching appointment. I didn't get out in extension, and people didn't see me talk about this. And when they did, it was like, oh, he's that wacko from on campus. When I changed to extension, I had the opportunity to start contaminating people with these ideas. And one of the things that we're seeing is that technical service providers slowly are starting to pick up on these ideas. And so I use this example of a producer in Virginia who was interested in intergenerational land transfer, to developing silvopasture. And the forester that helped him initially was very skeptical, but through training, through some of our extension workshops, she got, I don't want to say she drank the Kool-Aid, but she became willing to work with these systems in a way that she would not have in the past. Clicking. I don't know what's happening here. There we go. Another impact that I think is good is as we work with these systems, going back to where Ashley is, and how many people are working on corn and soybeans? Bazillion. We don't have a whole lot of scientists. I threw this picture in because some of you may know Gabe Pent, the guy in the dark blue coat there. This is a picture from about 8 years ago on a producer farm. That's Buck Holsinger on the left in the orange. And so we are seeing new scientists. Next slide, please. And they're putting out compelling data. Next slide, please. That are showing the benefits of these systems relative to land equivalency ratio. And so, that's encouraging. Next slide, please. And I guess this is kind of almost a segue to the next speaker. There's been an explosion of people that are interested in these systems, for their environmental benefits, carbon project drawdown. The Edwards Mother Earth Foundation, a colleague of mine worked with them. It's a private family foundation, and they've put money into paying people to develop silvopastures. I don't rub elbows that much with Savannah Institute, but I do a fair amount with Trees for Graziers and now with Working Trees, another organization that is it's a startup at Stanford, and they want to pay people for carbon, and they've developed ability to make that happen at small scale. Next slide, please. Yep, got ahead of myself. It actually worked. And we do see adoption in Virginia. It's much more towards thinning. But one of the nice things about that is these people say, look, I'm happy to show this off to anybody that wants to come take a look. And on the planting side, next slide, please. On the planting side, I say, well, I'm not going to worry about this. Everybody knows how to plant a tree, but it's a trick. And so it's been really encouraging to see producers like Wynn Miller, who will speak later, come up with new ways of integrating tree protection with fencing systems so that the systems themselves are more functional and flexible. Next slide, please. And that was the thank you. I had a couple of comments from an earlier session that I wanted to talk about. One of the things I think that is a challenge is we see a lot of worry about increases in labor. And that is a problem because more and more I talk to people who say, I can't find labor. I can't find people to do the work. And that's a challenge. So that may be a place for technology. But that may also help. Maybe we need to rethink what an economy looks like. Because I think if we can think about stacking enterprises, I'm happy to pay for that labor if it's going to accrue greater value to me. One of the things we're missing is good economic data on these systems over time. The other question, there was a question about scale. And I think it's kind of hard to change a traditional mindset. We see more producers that are, 100 acres, 50 acres, 7 acres, whatever. They're smaller in scale. The folks that say, well, I've been here for 5 generations and we've been cutting trees the whole time, I'm sure as heck not going to start planting them. Culture and scale, I think, go hand in hand. Agriculture is a compound word, and I think changing mentality is harder than changing practices a lot of the time. I've got some other thoughts relative to federal policy and that sort of thing too, which I think also is another thing that we need to give some consideration to. But I'm going to stop there. I've talked too much. Take it, Austin.
Thank you. I don't know why you didn't.
It might, yeah, the clicker is these days. Next, we're gonna shift to Austin Unruh, who is joining us from Pennsylvania today. He is the founder of Trees for Graziers. where their goal is to make silvopasture easy and cost-effective for farmers. That's why TFG offers everything from planning and funding acquisition to planting and aftercare, while also growing silvo-specific nursery stock. So sort of meeting that need for trees,
Will do.
everyone. When he's not joining us here, he enjoys berry picking with his young family. And I would love to hear more about that. But I think today we're gonna hear just a few words from Austin to get us started. Take it away.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Ashley. So first off, let's start off with this picture right here. This was taken at Virginia Tech. I think you saw those same trees represented just from a different angle in the presentation just now. And to me, this is the most beautiful representation of a silvopasture system that I'm aware of it, and I use this picture all the time because it really shows the type of system that I think has very large applicability across the country. Grazers can look at that. People who mostly care about their livestock and want to use silvopasture to facilitate what they're already doing, facilitate their livestock enterprise, can look at this and say, I understand how that is going to benefit my farm. I understand how that is going to support the enterprise that I already have. If you look at the sheep right there, they're as far away from any tree as they can be because that shade is moving throughout the course of the day. And so those livestock are moving so that they don't get penned up underneath one tree and make it a bare spot. Those trees, those grafted millwood honey locust trees that we have right there, those are going to be dropping feed during November and December and January, especially, or that time frame when we need additional forages. And the canopy themselves are dappled, so they're still allowing a lot of light to come through the canopy, hit the forages beneath, so you're not losing any forage production. So it really addresses those key things that farmers want to see. They want to see their livestock not have heat stress. They want to reduce their feed bills, and they also the thing that gives them pause is not wanting to lose forage production. I think this system hits basically everything that farmers want to see from a silvopasture system. So this is what we are trying to make possible at scale. Let's do the next one. Thank you. So our goal with Trees for Grazers is to see silvopasture adopted very, very widely. And our focus is on trees that are there to serve and support livestock. We don't focus our attention so much on trees that are there for human food crops. There's other organizations that are out there that are doing that and are going to do that much better than we can. Our focus is on trees that are there to support livestock enterprises. And what we see as the single largest bottleneck to seeing more silvopasture adoption is more technical service providers and especially more businesses that are out there in the landscape that can make silvopasture adoption easy for landowners. So we are based in southeastern Pennsylvania, and we started planting trees in pastures in 2020. So it's only been 3 years now, 4 years almost, since we did our very first silvopasture planting. And in that time, we've worked with 25 farms, and we've done multiple phases on many of these farms. And then this next spring, in about 2 months, we'll be putting in another 15 farms of silvopasture. And almost all of those are in one county in Pennsylvania. And so we've been able to achieve a very, very high density of silvopasture adoption in our region. And all of this is planting trees into pastures. Because of the context that we're in, there are very few woods that are grazed. Land goes for $30,000 to $50,000 an acre in our area. So everything is cropped and everything is grazed to the max. So in that context, we are always adding and integrating trees into those pastures. And we've found that if we can make this process simple for people, there is significant interest. And it's not like when we started that people were knocking down our doors saying, we want silvopasture. But as we started working with a few early adopters and we did field days and tours, other people saw what we were doing and they saw early successes and said, if you can do that for me, I'm on board. And so we take care of everything that a farmer can need. So we will do consulting and planning with them. We will go out and find the funding to reduce the cost of the planting for them. So rather than have them go and find contacts and find funding, we're going to do that for them and make the connection. And we play matchmaker. We try to match the right funding with the right farmer. And then we have a silvopasture specific nursery, because we don't want to put out just any old trees, and the trees that are out there right now don't really meet the standards that we have, especially for honey locusts or persimmons or mulberries, or the specialty trees that we want that are going to have significant upsides. The right genetics are not out there, and especially not at the right price. So we have our own silvopasture specific nursery. We do the planting and we do the post-planting care on these farms, because we know that if we leave it to the farmers, usually it doesn't happen, right? There's just so many other things that need to happen on a farm. And so we build into our contracts that we are going to be out there and we are going to take care of those trees at least twice a year for the first 4 years, and make sure that those trees have the highest chance as possible of getting established well. And it's been very gratifying for us to work with farmers who have said, I have wanted to plant trees. I've wanted to establish trees on this farm ever since I moved onto the farm 20 years ago. But you know, the list of things to do is always 100 things long, and all of them should have been done yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago, right? And so planting trees never gets to the top of that list. And even if it does, in reality, most farmers don't have good success when they go out and plant trees. There's a lot of things, as we've learned today, that can go wrong. And when you finally muster up the time, the energy, the money to invest, and then you have a 50% or 80% or a 100% mortality rate, that's discouraging. And so we're able to come through, and we've already done that, right? We've killed plenty of trees. We plant a lot of trees, we kill a lot of trees, but we learn from it every time, because we are doing the whole process and we get feedback on every single thing that we do. And so we're able to learn and take those learnings and bring it to the next farm. So that's what we want to see, is we want to see other professionals out there, whether they're working for a nonprofit, whether they're working for a university, or whether they're in business for themselves, be able to provide those services. Because if you do that, you will find that there are farmers, there are homesteaders, there are landowners in your area that will say, yes, I want you to do that. I want you to bring that to me and allow me to do that. Look, the clicker worked that time. So in addition to the right people and having the services to make this happen, we want to see the right trees go out on the landscape, right? So historically, there's not been the demand for the type of trees that we want, or at the volume to make it worthwhile for nurseries to develop these trees and develop them at the right prices. It's one thing for a homeowner to want a grafted persimmon tree and pay $50 for one because it's going to be in their backyard. But if you ask a farmer to plant a persimmon tree and they have a choice between a $50 grafted one or a $2 seedling persimmon, but you don't know if that seedling is going to be male or female, and you're already going to put a lot of money and time and effort into getting that tree established, it'd be much nicer to know that that's going to be a female, and to know if that's going to drop in September or October or December. So that's what we're working towards, is being able to design systems with the right trees. We want honey locust trees that are not thorny. We want thornless honey locust trees that are female, that are going to have high yields of high quality pods, and where we can determine if it's going to be early, middle, or late season, so that we can bring more value to that farm. And it can create a system, an ecosystem that actually works for the farm and creates significant economic benefits, as well as the ecological benefits that we're all aware of, right? We want for farmers to be making choices to adopt silvopasture because they are confident that this will add to the economic bottom line of their farm and the economic resiliency. And as a byproduct, we get carbon sequestration and we got ecosystem services. And then impact takes time, right? And that's one of the most limiting factors of agroforestry is that everything that we do takes time. There's no instant wins. But what you do want to do is start with the easiest wins that are out there. So this is a picture of a hybrid poplar live stake. And so what we've developed now is we have on all of our plantings, when we're bringing in hybrid poplars or hybrid willows, we bring them in for fast shade because that's what brings people to us is they want shade, and that we can give them pretty quickly and at a low cost. So coming in with a 10-foot tall hybrid poplar, we're able to get shade for livestock in 2 years, right? So that picture is taken in the second growing season after that live stake was planted. And actually, when that one was planted, it was only 8 foot tall. And then by now we have 10 or 12-foot tall live stakes. I've tried to see how far we can push it. I've put a 20-foot tall live stake out and all of them worked. So we can really push this and get much quicker results that are going to stand out. They're going to be visual demonstrations of success. And once you get success with the easy things, then you can try the larger scale and you can try the more complicated or finicky or expensive trees. But let's start off with easy wins on a small scale, get our foot in the door, and then we can build off of those early successes into more significant wins in the future. And I think with that, that wraps it up for me.
All right, thanks so much, Austin. Our final guest with us this afternoon is Reginaldo Halcet Marroquin. He's joining us as the brilliant mind behind the nonprofit Regenerative Agriculture Alliance and is a co-founder of the Tree Range Chicken brand. This is really built out of his work with immigrants, farmers, old and new, established agricultural entrepreneurs, and is really working with them to design, refine, and champion a global model for poultry-powered, planet-cooling, scalable, and regenerative agriculture.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to bring some of these thoughts to you. And I hope that our ancestors will be here with us today as we reflect on their teachings, what we have learned from them, how we are recodifying their wisdom into the needs of the world as it currently exists. And we'll be proud of the words that will be expressing those thoughts so that we may make better connections so that today we'll feel connected and that our children will be proud of what we are accomplishing. And with that, my job really was not to come up with a new system, but rather look at the environment that we are living through today and the challenges globally for food, for nutrition, especially because food and nutrition, you know, it's not the same thing. And then to come into this space by going after the ancestral, well-established process, which through evolutionary processes of the earth itself, optimize not only the species, but also the ecological blueprints across the planet, so that photosynthesis, animal activity, and soil could be optimized. Photosynthesis, animals, and soil is where most of the energy on the planet is transformed. Animals is really where it happens the fastest and is the most effective. Now, when we come into a space and we mess with either one of those three, we deteriorate the soil health or the animal intervention in the scale at which it needs to be done, or we reduce the photosynthetic area of a landscape. All of those things, as we interfere, we actually diminish that geoevolutionary blueprint, which was perfected over billions of years, in which conditions for us to say that we can do better is not only arrogant, it's an insult to our ancestors who understood that we can't. And it is also very, very diminishing to us as human species to pretend that that is actually possible. What is possible, though, is to remove the blockage of the other 95% of our indigenous intellect so that we may see the full potential of any ecological blueprint. And in this context, for me, it's about the chickens. For all of us, it's about the trees. For some of you, it may be about the chickens and the trees. And at the end of the day, it's about all three of these elements of the planet, right? Or these places where through the biophysics and the chemistry of the planet, governed by the laws of thermodynamics, energy goes from non-edible to edible forms, whatever you want to call it, eggs, forages, beef, sheep, whatever you want to call it. Those are simply expressions of the energy of the planet, us being one of them. And hopefully you will become food when you are done as well. Chicken is our entry point into the system, only because you got to enter the system through the functions of livestock. We pick chickens for hundreds of reasons, that primarily because in most small farms, new farms, immigrant farmers, land access is the biggest barrier by far of any. And so chickens allows us to break down a lot of those barriers and accomplish the same things that established farmers can. Now, back to the three areas of intervention. The chicken for us, again, is the entry point. That's the livestock of choice. The trees are central because chickens are jungle fowl. The soil and what the chicken and the trees do to the soil is critical to close those loops and to optimize the energy transformation capacity of the landscape. We don't think of an acre as 43,600 or something square feet. Rather, we think of it as a three-dimensional space where energy transformation is happening all the way from the deepest root to the top, to the canopy, to the talus canopy, and everything in between. It's a three-dimensional image, right? And that allows us to see the other 95% of possibilities that we ignore and we block when we look at it linearly from an extractive production perspective, right? Still get the outputs. We'll get more if we see it three-dimensionally. And so the first harvest is fruits, nuts, meat, eggs, all of those things. Then the energy that we can't use right there on this space because the chickens sleep on barns, and that manure, which we can't eat right away, but other creatures will, gets transformed over and over. So we are now generating grain production, vegetable production, medicines, and literally a full plate with over 200 different vegetables, that because of chickens actually have all 13 of the basic nutrients that almost every plant needs in order to get to a very high level of proficiency in its genetic expressions, right? So it's another reason we pick poultry. But some of that energy, again, turns back into the system. And as a circular energy cycling process, we calculated we are harvesting between 30 and 40% of all of the energy transformed, which means we are leaving 70% in the bank of energy so that the system continuously, exponentially improves year after year after year. And we have seen that now through the data we are collecting. This is just a picture of what the space looks like. These are hazelnuts. The trees, back to Austin's point, you gotta pick the right trees. Any tree won't do it with chickens. And we can get into that in the consultation sessions if you want to. It will only cost you about $400 an hour. Not really. We can exchange it, as I said before, maybe we do it for an exchange of services. If you don't have trees, you can always create a canopy for the chickens. We use sunflowers and corn rotated while the trees develop. The key to this is that you get a livestock that delivers you income within 70 days. While they also fertilize and weed your tree plantings, at least where the chickens range. And then they give you the fertilizer for the rest of the farm where you may be growing trees as well. So you got this whole system integrated. There's never excess manure or nutrient overloading or anything like that because the tree density in the ranging areas is calculated so that it will absorb all of the nitrogen and other nutrients that the chickens are laying around. From there, from the production unit, which is simply an engineering unit with on the bottom, you can see this is Will Crombie's farm. You may hear about the organic compound. That's the first farm that we actually designed and deployed as part of a collective. That farm is mapped out for 4 production units on the south, and then the rest of it is alley cropped with the same species so that you can actually move that energy around the farm. A production unit is a barn, 2 paddocks, water, feed, and the rest of it is a couple of hours of work a day, and you can raise 3 flocks. The northern climate around here, you can raise up to 4 flocks, 1,500 chickens per flock, And the density of the trees then is calculated to give that jungle-like environment, about 50 to 60% canopy cover. You use hazelnuts or elderberries, and then the upper canopy with perennials native to that space. The key is that now you have stacked everything above the chicken, below the chicken, and now you have a fully functioning two-dimensional space. They look great. I really like our farms. The people come in to take pictures, students come in there to sit around. Contrary to what a lot of folks think, there is no manure accumulation in the fields. You can walk barefoot out there 3 days after we have rotated them. The amount of biological activity is so large that it actually processes all of that continuously. The hazelnuts inside where the chickens range, like you see here, have been now producing the hazelnuts outside of the chicken paddocks by 2 to 3 times. So you know that those hazelnuts are super happy, probably happier than the chickens, I would say. I have no proof of that, and no scientist that would tackle that question. 4 weeks inside the barn, and then they get to range. Now, don't ask me how we get them to do that on their own, because it's a long answer, but it takes training, just to give you an idea. But they will do that under proper management. Management, again, being the key. That same flock, 70 days later, still doing the same thing. You can see the green stuff really close to the barn. That shows you that even close to the barn, they don't obliterate everything. Proper management again. If you don't do the stuff the way it is designed, you will have bare ground everywhere. The rotational system eliminates a lot of the labor. Open the door and they do the rest. And we're not talking about 100 chickens. This is 1,500 chickens per flock. It's a really nice sight to see them, get outside. You can see the hazelnuts fully grown in this case. Manure then gets processed, mixed with other organic matter to create the proper nitrogen carbon ratios and to fertilize the crops outside of the ranging areas for the chickens. We have grown almost every vegetable that I would ever want to eat. And we get optimal results. Even corn grows completely 100% with only this input. The layered mulching is critical. We brought some of our native corn and native beans and grown food sovereignty primarily, but also other folks are growing it, like the garlic. We're scaling it up for markets, so we are setting up processing for that. We streamlined the process of planting the trees so that we can plant, in this specific case, this is my farm. We planted 8,200 trees in 4 days, and we were done with it. And then we just made sure we took care of them. We had 80% survival, so we're on the opposite side. Then we brought scientists. Now we are tracking all of the different critical indicators of the ecological impact of this system. We're in the 3rd year. We got 2 more years. We have been blessed with incredible partners that not only know the science, but also investors who have put capital into ensuring that we track this. And the results have been really blowing us away. Not only is the nutrient density of our chicken now, as in the preliminary results, showing sometimes in the vitamin A, for example, we go from a rate of 15, 18, 20 in the competition, grams to ours at 250, for example. It's so exponentially larger in terms of a lot of the differences that, and we know because this is the health of the soil being expressed. And for example, that probe, penetrating the regular field, which was actually a very healthy field, only 56 inches, while ours went straight down 82. Give you the idea of the structure of that soil. The organic carbon at 60 centimeters, we still had carbon so the depth of that carbon in a space where there was no carbon whatsoever below a few inches when we started. And then the infiltration, 71, 13, and 6 inches in per hour in vertical versus 2 and 1. That's such an exponential difference, and we know water is life. And so this is critical indicators that there is an explosion of life. And because of that, there will be an optimization of the expression of the genetics of any species that we put in there. Until we do that, we don't know which trees are going to do better, because the space where they are placed is in the conditions of it is critical to how they do. So to that landscape painting, by the way, when I'm asked, what do? I always say, I'm an artist. And my canvas is the landscape. And our job is to ensure that it looks beautiful. And so to that landscape blueprint, we added a business blueprint of an ecosystem, right? And so Tree Ranch Farms is what I'm running now. It's 1 year old. We now have established ourselves in core markets. We developed just around over $1 million worth of markets this year. And we have 11 farms. We're moving into 25 farms this coming season with capacity for about 70 to 100,000 broilers. And we also bought a processing facility in Stacyville, Iowa a few years ago, launched the nonprofit arm of the system in 2018. And just recently, we launched Ecosystem Transformative Capital, which is the financing arm for the equity, which means we can buy equity into our own company and put that in the name of farmers and workers and so on. It's an ecosystem, a business ecosystem, to give you an idea, not a business. We are, as a Tree Ranch Farms, will eventually be owned by everybody who participates in the ecosystem. And then this blueprint, we can now transfer it to new regions because we did standardize the process. This is codified to be replicable. Maybe not the same species if a region has different blueprints, ecological blueprints, but the same blueprint for how they get deployed, right? So come to the Poultry Convergence is coming up in 21st and 23rd of March in Norfolk, Minnesota. Through this convergence, we're now building the blueprint for the governing infrastructure for the whole system, meaning every affinity group in the ecosystem gets a seat in the council that then defines the system. Somebody asked me to clarify on LinkedIn, what does farmer standards look like? Well, this is what it looks like. If they're listening, that's their answer. I'm not going to answer directly because I don't have time for that. This is the QR code if you want to come out in March. This is the third time we're gathering as a region of the poultry sector. And our hope is that as we form the council for the region, is the bordering region between Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin, that other regions will start doing the same. And eventually we can launch the Region of the Poultry Council of America by bringing representatives from all the different regions. And at that point, we literally collectively take over the poultry sector and create a blueprint for how you take over all of the other sectors and turn them into what we want rather than what we're being imposed upon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. So I have a couple of questions that I want to make sure that we start a dialogue that we hit on today, because the goal of our particular session is really to hear from you in all of your respective experiences and work. Really, I want to see the proof in the pudding, I guess. That's kind of what I want to talk about today. You know, as John said, you know, us scientists can sit in our ivory towers and come up with research questions of what's missing in the literature. But bringing you all here today, I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing as far as silvopasture success and struggles and challenges. So, you know, when I talk to my students, and maybe this isn't the right way to frame it, but I usually say there's no one right way to do silvopasture. There are wrong ways to do silvopasture. So with that sort of tidbit, I want to hear from each of you in turn, kind of your thoughts on this idea of what are you seeing as some of the uniting factors of silvopasture success? What does that look like? And some of the common challenges that you feel like we're running into.
John Dickerson.
Oh, I was hoping that was yours. Yeah, I think I really appreciate both my peers here in the experience that they've had from an academic setting. I mean, I'm not out there planting trees. And I always thought, wow, that's easy enough. You know, you just go stick some trees in the ground. And, you know, I've done some of that with high levels of success and very high levels of failure. And having the, I think you're right on target, having that kind of business community that can
Mhm.
address those issues, that can reduce the resistance for producers to get started, will help move this system much faster. You know, we've got to do stuff like that because I mean, from my perspective, as we move to scale, the people that are going to scale, they're going down to the local seed and feed store, and they're buying bulk, and you know they've got people down there that can help them. And you say, "We'll plant a few trees," and they go, well, they got nothing, and they need that kind of. That's kind of the mentality that they work with, or the framework that they work within for their operations, and they need some of that. You know, Reggie may not agree with that, and I respect where Reggie's coming from if he does disagree. I mean, I just think that's where limitations are and that can be met. Now, how profitable those business models are, you'll have to ask Austin what he's paying in taxes each year or whatever. But that's to me, I think that's you know, I suggested that maybe you plant walnut and walnut and black locust trees together. And I've suggested that. I had a farmer that did that. And the black locusts have done fantastic, and the walnuts have they've kind of suffered. So, but walnuts are well suited to our region.
Mhm.
How do we get around those limitations? Anyway, I'm taking too much time. Go.
So I have a motto that I use, which is start small, but start now. I think that's the best thing for people to do is that we want to keep our failures small. We want to keep our expenses small when we're just starting out with this stuff. If I were to talk to Molly, who was presenting earlier, I would say, let's try this again, but let's try with a very, very, very small planting. Let's plant like 10 trees, especially like for her instance, it's a very different climate. Like it's a Mediterranean climate. There's going to be more challenges if you're bringing a model from one system, one climate into a very different climate. So let's start with a very, very small planting and see what works, see what doesn't, then make adjustments for your next planting. The way that we've gone about it is when we work with a client, let's say they want to do 100 acres, we are not going to plant all 100 acres at once. Because even if we know how to get trees established, every farm is unique and every farm takes time and every farmer takes time to figure out what actually works for me, what actually works for my system. And what you think in year one, it might be different by year 2, 3, or 10. So what we do is we say, let's start with 20 acres of those 100. Let's get those established. And then let's wait 2 years to do phase 2, because that gives you some real time to reflect, see what's going well, what's not going well, and then make adjustments before you have to apply for funding and buy your tree stock and that kind of thing. And then let's slowly and steadily continue on adding more trees to our systems. And the nice thing is that right now we really there's not near as much support and resources available for silvopasture as there's going to be in the years to come. We're really on an upward trajectory. So there's going to be, if you can be patient, start now, start small, get your experience, then over time, you're going to be able to have access to better tree stock, better genetics, better cost share, better professional resources and guidance in your area. And so it really pays to play the long game and slowly, steadily build up the silvopasture systems on your farm.
Sorry to interrupt. The one comment I would throw at you, and I like your strategy, but what those trees look like at year 10 and what they look like at year 20 could be very different. And that's why we need the long-term research too, to say, okay, this is kind of what we think the trajectory looks like, but unless we carry it out, we really don't know. And then like the compositional changes in the understory that we see and that sort of stuff. We started out with bigger honey locust trees, and then suddenly they're putting all their energy into pods, and the walnuts are big. You know, so those sorts of things, I think, will be helpful as well to inform producers.
I think we started by the fact that the trees, the chickens, the cows, the sheep, they are not the ones destroying the planet. It is us. So we start with people. The trees are an instrument. Chickens are an instrument. It's a strategy. So to me, it's critical that we understand those fundamentals of systems change. Because if not, I mean, you could end up with millions of acres planted in civil pasture to no end, because we will still be exploiting people, abusing each other, and treating each other like animals, like we do right now, like the children working in JBA's processing facilities in Nebraska, for example, that we're finally caught up in that. Okay, so I would much rather have a large-scale system across the country of small farms organized regionally so that we can actually acquire people power. And if we do that, everything else happens. Everything we're talking about happens. Silvopasture, however we want to go about the land. But we first need ownership control and governing structures so that we can actually decide what goes on the land. Until we do that, all of this is not really feasible. It's only feasible in our little corners. But let's stop calling a farm a system to start with, because it creates the wrong framework in the mind. And the mind, remember, 3 stages by which systems and everything materialize. You first think about it, or somebody thinks about it, or a whole population thinks about it, or a king, or a president, or a wannabe dictator thinks about it. Second stage is you express it and articulate it in a way that can be turned into engineering blueprints. And third, it gets built. All we're doing is articulating it, taking this big system, but systems, let's understand them, these are not farms. These are systems incorporate such a massive amount of infrastructure. And then within that is the production on the farm level. And that could be called the production model or something. And we could have hundreds of production models. That doesn't make a system until we aggregate all the infrastructure. And for us, the future of silvopasture, agroforestry, and all these other non-conventional, non-extractive, non-colonizing frameworks stand a bright future if we get a lot of people involved and we retake ownership control and governance and establish the governing structures so that we can start managing our regions as territories that belong to us, not to corporations and the government. Because when you get people involved, people vote, people speak, people mobilize, and people, once we decide on the land, then we get a leg up. Until we can do that, again, the trees are not the ones that are destroying the planet, or the sheep or the cows or the chickens. And it is the people problem we got to fix first. And as we do that, then people start coming along. The more people you see in a gathering like this, the more people want to come to this. And that's the key to the success here.
I really appreciate that sentiment, and I'm glad you kind of started that thought process of people, the concept of our role in this space and managing silvopastures and implementing silvopastures. So I think I got some, if you want to add to it, but I'm going to pose the next question then of the people problem, so to speak. What do you think is our biggest challenge, our biggest roadblock from that people power perspective? I think, Rehi, you did a great job kind of talking about governance and all of the issues tied with that of justice and sovereignty and that sort of thing. Do you have any additional thoughts? And Austin and John, I'd love to hear, what is our biggest roadblock as people in this equation?
Well, it's no different than the problem of the worms and the crickets and every other species. We are all born indigenous to the planet, made out of primarily carbon, right? Hydrogen, oxygen. 97.5% of us is made out of those core elements and the molecules that they form, primarily glucose, right? Okay. Based on that, we're born both native to certain territories and indigenous to the planet itself. When we understand that, then we see the full potential of everything around us. When we embrace that innate intelligence and we cultivate the indigenous intellect that allows us that opening of the mind and the real potential of our minds. And with that, we can solve almost anything in front of us, because we won't do it for the purpose of me and us and the colonizers and the companies and the profit and all of that. By the way, in the real solutions, there is no such a thing as a profit. And if you are paying taxes, you are actually not viable. because that means you're extracting from the community, and that's why you have to pay taxes. So it makes you an extractive industry. When you create wealth instead and management systems through governance and ownership and community basis, then you don't have to have a profit to have a super healthy livelihood. That's what we're talking about on the non-colonized side. Unfortunately, we're also born colonizers, no different than the crickets and the grasshoppers. They also want to survive, and they go and take all the food, and they want the food from the neighbor and the land from the neighbor and everything. And just like us, they do the same thing. And that is not the people problem, it's an organism problem. We're born both. The issue is, as we speak and as our words express what we are thinking, we always slip towards colonizing language. And when you think that way and express it that way, you will build it that way. That is the problem. But it is not a people problem. It is that we as people have actually embraced the colonizer and trashed the indigenous, ridiculed it, killed them, killed the indigenous. And we are always consistently trying to kill it within us. The second we start enhancing it and letting it flourish, we have solved not the people problem, but our issue as organisms of the planet, indigenous of the planet, who have chosen to be colonizers instead of just simply being part of this planet's living.
Austin, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'll go back to what I was sharing about earlier in the need for service providers to make this simple and accessible to farmers, right? Because so many farmers have so much to do and don't have the opportunity, the time, the money to do this themselves. Think about how many people would have solar panels on their roofs if they had to buy the solar panels, if they had to install them up there, if they had to wire the electric. Like 1% maybe of the total people that have solar panels on their roofs right now would have it if there weren't businesses and services out there that made it easy for people to do that. And the same applies to agroforestry. Thankfully, agroforestry is a little bit easier, but the same thing applies. And what we've learned is we've tried to figure out, how do we scale? How do we grow so that we can serve the people that are coming to us and asking us to serve them and to create plans and do consulting and do implementation and installs all over the country? How do we serve the people in New York or Virginia or out in Missouri that want to do that? And what we're realizing is it really doesn't make sense. It really doesn't scale logistically very well. And so what we want to see is, and what we're actively working towards and training people is, we're training people to become service providers, agroforestry service providers for their region, to take the successes and the models that we've learned and developed and take them to their own region and apply them to their own context, so that this business, this service can be adapted to your personal context and what works for you, to your geographic context. Who are the landowners? What are their needs? What are the issues that they are facing, the problems that they're facing that can be addressed through agroforestry? And so we're actively working towards that and developing training so that we can have small, independent, regional service providers, whether that be a nonprofit or a business, that can serve the people in their area, and they get to know the people in their area. They know the resources that are available, and then they're able to serve people whether they are large or small. Like right now, if I had a project in Missouri, sorry, Josh, I wouldn't be able to come to your farm. I'd have to be like a multi-thousand-acre farm to come out and do any work, because the farther it is from us, the bigger the project has to be for us to justify it. But what we want to see is, we want to see small service providers all over the place. Every single county should have someone that can offer services, that can walk a farmer through the process of establishing a silvopasture, and has the experience to be able to guide someone through that process. So that's what we're working towards.
John, from an academic standpoint, living in the realm of literature, what do you feel like our biggest people problem, the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome for successful silvopasture?
You're I want to expand on what these guys have said a little bit, because I'm not sure I can handle your question. PhD is a philosophy degree, and I spend more and more of my time kind of in philosophical musings. What does it mean to be human? What's the value of my life? How do I fulfill, whatever it is I'm supposed to do in some sort of grander sense of purpose? Is there a purpose, right? Religious and philosophical questions that human beings have been asking for millennia. And the pace at which we need to be working on these questions, I think, is speeding up with the pace of technological change, because our technological change is happening a lot faster than our heart has changed, in my mind. So, it's kind of very interesting, stepping back a little bit and trying to get back into the agroforestry framework. Reginaldo is talking in terms of sort of an indigenous system, and pardon my lack of eloquence with, descriptions of it. Austin is talking about trying to get back to kind of smaller scale, spread, diverse systems. Both of these kind of look like sort of the Jeffersonian model, right? Well, we'll have small farmsteads across the country and it'll all be grand. Okay. I spend a lot of time thinking about, well, that sounds good, but what about our policy? And policy is largely been driven. I remember a politician saying this years ago, said our policy is driven towards cheap food and cheap fuel. And to me, we live in kind of a world of bread and circuses. As long as I'm happy and I'm entertained, maybe we won't worry about climate change until it's just too dadgum hot to play football anymore. So if we're stuck in that paradigm, it's got to be cheap. And I think it's Michael Pollan that says, pay your grocer now or pay your doctor later. And so I think for me, the biggest challenge is culture, whether it's culture of the people that are out on the farm or the culture of the people that are in a metropolitan area, and they want to be able to have lots of goodies at low prices and that sort of thing. Is that fulfilling? Is consumption and having more and more and more, okay, I can move into Missouri and build a big farm. Well, okay, I can push the natives out and we'll go into Oklahoma or wherever it is. I mean, yeah, the kind of the colonization mentality. We had a whole idea of manifest destiny. This is what we're supposed to do. And so I guess, again, I'm sorry for all the navel gazing, but I'm back to this issue of what does it mean? And what should our values be? And how do I interact with you if you and I have very different values, right? But if we can find a common purpose, we think that this will be healthier for your livestock, then hey, I'm all about it. Let's work on finding a common purpose. I think in the context of the political moment in this country, we spend a lot of time saying, you're over there and I'm over here and we'll never be together again. And I think that's unfortunate and wrong. And we need to find where we can come to agreement on things. So I say, hey, would you like to put trees in your pasture? You say, well, what kind of crapola is that? I say, well, hey, do your livestock need shade? Yeah, okay, well then so how do we find places to bridge gaps in relationships, to provide the leadership? From my perspective, it comes back to these relationships. And that's really what he's talking about and what he's talking about. Build relationships to help people do better jobs of managing their landscape.
So I love that thought, and we are running close to time. So I briefly want to wrap up with sort of a positive shift in direction. Given all of this, right? We have a lot of different people to meet at different places, right? We got to meet people where they're at. And I think we still have a long way to go. But for each of you, what are you most optimistic about in this realm with silvopasture?
Well, I'll start. I'm optimistic because in less than 4 years, we went from having done all our research to actually starting implementation. And 10 years ago, I said, we need to shoot for 5% of the total poultry market. That means 3.5 million acres under this kind of system. 1 million farm operations, businesses with at least 6 related employments. That's 7 million people involved, 10 regions across the country, $7.5 billion of market share, and a tipping point that would allow us to flip over into other space. And yes, we're just scratching the bottom of that, but we are at the bottom, not below. And we were below, and for the most part, everywhere you go in the industry, we're still below, right? We're no longer there. And once you got started, again, what's the most important thing in this stuff? Get started. And we did, and we're doing well. And with more regions like this and more insurgents like you, getting that fire in your gut and going and saying, no more with this, fake stuff that we are sold in the name of progress and feeding the world, while also implementing a massive capacity to destroy the planet, the very foundation on which we depend to feed the world, right? And yet we destroy it in the name of feeding the world. Once we say no to that, this starts to gain that momentum inside of us. And then our thought process changes. What we say changes. And as a result, what we do changes. And as we see that happening in our sector with poultry in the middle, but then bringing in over 14 enterprise sectors that now intersect with trees, with pork producers, with all the other sectors, I just feel like we're at the beginning of an actual revolution, a revolution that is not just about, going out there and talking, but actually establishing infrastructure that we can protect, defend, and expand collectively. So we are not just erased by another farm bill or by another company that buys us out.
I'll say I'm very optimistic about the future of silvopasture. So similarly, in the last almost 4 years, we have determined ways to simply and cost effectively get trees established in actively grazed pastures. We have methods to do that. We have made significant improvements on the nursery stock that we have available, and being able to bring the propagation methods, bring new propagation methods or return old propagation methods to bring this to the market at scale and at lower prices. We've made significant strides on the nursery side, and we're getting really good feedback and really good participation by more people as we have figured out a model that more people are adopting this for their own regions and starting to provide services for their own regions. And that's really what gets me the most excited, is seeing this spread and seeing a whole bunch of other people who are just very sharp and very motivated and have energy and are bringing this into their own regions and supporting farmers in their local communities. So, and we're only just a couple years in, and there's a lot that's happened in just a few years. And I'm really looking forward to, as more people get in this and more energy and enthusiasm comes into this, we're going to get a lot of creative minds working on climate change, working on agroforestry, and bringing their youth and creativity and variety of experiences to the table to be able to make new solutions and bring the solutions and the models that have been developed in one place and being able to adopt them in a whole lot more regions all throughout the country. And so I see that there's really bright future ahead for silvopasture and agroforestry.
So I'm optimistic, excited because of people like in Austin, people who have started doing all the stuff that he said. I don't speak very eloquently. I think Austin did a very nice job of talking about that. We are at the point of probably the largest intergenerational land transfer, at least in Virginia and probably across the country. A number of the people that I deal with are interested in something different. Whether or not they're willing to go the distance on these systems is still an open question. But successes that people such as and Reggie are showing the model or blueprint for those changes, or for those people who are going to inherit farms. I have a lot of kind of cautionary feelings about all of that. And I'm a little older than he is, so maybe that's part of the change or the differential in optimism. But again, seeing people address problems, develop solutions, bring creativity to it, the growth of all of these private enterprises that are in the space now that weren't there 20 years ago when people looked at me like, what? And, you know, it's very rewarding to see those changes. And so that is exciting and encouraging.
I would like to say that we are here at an academic institution. We have 4 scientists now tracking and documenting what we're doing with poultry and the landscape. And from an academic perspective, we have now finally gotten into this space where we are codifying ancestral indigenous knowledge into teachable forms. We have the first online regenerative poultry platform with 14 different chapters. Regenpoultry.com, if you want to go there and check it out. REGEN poultry.com. All that needs is a few validations to be able to be turned into a new curriculum across the country, as long as the institutions are willing to come on board. And we have seen that happening, ISU, MU, Vermont, I mean, all over the place, right? So I see also a bright future for the academic institutions to progress, to move into this new space, and to help in the process of further codifying this so that the new generations is not fed fake stuff anymore, but the real things, the real solutions.
All right, an excellent ending thought. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to our guests, John, Austin, and Rehi, for your excellent, insightful thoughts.